Story 1. You were screaming at the top of your lungs. Do not pick up the phone because you were downloading something or playing online. Story 2. I waited minutes for a single image to load and hoped no one would answer the phone and disconnect the dial-up connection. Story 3. The amount of truly vile stuff I saw from 1995 to 2005 as a child and teenager in those Wild West days of the internet. Maybe that material still exists or circulates somewhere that I am blissfully unaware of, but it all seems much more tame now. Story 4. Click, brrr, crunch, ding, whir, click, screech. Story 5. America Online floppy disks in the mail, paying for your internet connection by the minute. Story 6. Arguments on Microsoft Network Messenger with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and constant status updates. Kazaa, LimeWire, and burned compact discs. MySpace. Story 7. At the time, you could not make money on your YouTube videos because monetization was not available yet. Story 8. LimeWire. You downloaded what you thought was a song, but it turned out not to be one. Story 9. Dial-up internet access. The equally horrifying and exciting modem screech. Also, in a faux cyborg game show announcer voice, you've got mail. Memento mori. Carpe noctem. Story 10. Listen to the modem make the connection. Then launch Netscape Navigator version 1.0. Story 11. The absolute trust we had in complete strangers in the shadiest chat rooms who asked for pictures and face-to-face meetings. How are we still alive? Story 12. I wasted blank compact discs because the ripping program, which took 2 hours to run, failed when it was 98% complete. Story 13. Balance how often you dial up a connection to check your mail when you are paying by the minute. Story 14. Downloading a new album from your favorite band for 10 hours at a speed of 5 kilobits per second. Story 15. Basically, there were no internet searches. You had to access everything either by knowing the Uniform Resource Locator or by drilling down through menus on sites like Yahoo. Story 16. Receiving a new floppy disk for installation in the mail for your internet service. Story 17. Search engines were unreliable. You found things by clicking through web links and hoping you had reached the right place. Most often you did not, but there was a definite sense of exploration and possibility. 10 websites did not receive 95% of traffic worldwide. Story 18. Anonymous file transfer protocol servers. You can't even begin to describe what it was like on an internet that had zero security. 30 years before the internet became a cesspool, it was an Eden. Story 19. I kept a handwritten list of websites and internet protocol addresses of interesting web pages. Only computers with internet access were available in the architecture lab at the university. There was no Google, and the domain name system was unreliable or not available everywhere. Story 20. Back then, you still had to walk 20 miles a day past all the farms to see if they had any milk, eggs, or internet left. Story 21. In the early days, companies offered free items to people simply for finding their websites. I received a lot of free t-shirts, polos, towels, beach shorts, computer accessories, and other items. Now, not so much. Story 22. Painstakingly copying hypertext markup language code so you can personalize the look of your MySpace page. Story 23. Speaking as someone who built websites as far back as 1994, people will never know how hard we tried to compress images to keep pages from being too slow. We used sliced images arranged in tables and progressive joint photographic experts group images so pages would appear immediately and then increase in clarity over several seconds. It was hard work, but worth it once you nailed it. Story 24. Getting up to secretly use the internet at night on the family computer in the living room and putting a pillow over the modem so as not to wake the whole house. Story 25. People regularly acted under their own names on public forums. There was a common belief that the internet was a separate place where laws and social norms did not apply. Story 26. Basically, they do not have the patience to wait for a page with images to upload. Story 27. I was grounded from using the internet for more than a week. Story 28. Watching an image slowly load from top to bottom, anticipating a breast reveal. Story 29. Forums, also known as the water cooler of internet opinion, were popular before Reddit gained a monopoly on them. Story 30. Visiting a website you liked that was created by a single person, then discovering other cool websites by following every uniform resource locator on their links page. Story 31. There were no search engines. You could find lists of websites through bulletin board systems, early online communities similar to primitive social news sites, or you might be given an address scribbled on a torn piece of notebook paper by a friend at school. Uniform resource locators were usually long strings because only large companies had short ones at the time. The short uniform resource locator wars were an interesting period when a random teenager could buy the domain name Coca-Cola and become an instant millionaire. Story 32. Everything once felt rough, unique, and homemade. Now websites seem sterile and the same. It is hard to explain, but it used to feel like you actually explored the internet. Now you just ask it what you want, get an answer or a link, and move on. Story 33. The early Napster days were wild. It could take hours to download a single MPEG-1 audio layer 3 audio file, only to discover it was a terrible live recording captured from the audience. Story 34. The idea of not being online all the time, you had to dial up and, in the early America Online days, faced a limited amount of connection time. Story 35. Reading through pages of forums, mostly filled with people arguing, only to find that nobody there knows where to get the item you were looking for in the game you were playing. Story 36. Before dynamic hypertext markup language, every page was static. You had to submit multiple pages to navigate a decision tree, fully reloading the page each time. Story 37. Having to pop in a compact disc every couple of months to get free internet access. I don't think we paid for internet until broadband became common. Story 38. A common warning is that you should never give out personal information online because it can remain accessible and people could use it to harm you. Today, you may be considered strange if you do not have a social media page that shares a personal summary. Story 39. Trill, twang, chirr, beep, PRF, BRR. Now connected. Story 40. I downloaded music from LimeWire to make compact discs and got viruses from it. My Boo by Alicia Keys and F You Right Back by Eamon were worth it to 13-year-old me. Laughing out loud. Story 41. I spent 45 minutes trying to open and load Stick Figure Shootout on Miniclip, only to reach 89% when my mother needed to make a phone call. Story 42. The internet was not everywhere or always connected. It was a physical place in front of the desktop computer. You went to a specific place to do internet things. Then you got up and did other things. It did not follow you. Story 43. Weird little things you could download to your desktop, like one with tiny roaches running across the screen that you could smash with the mouse, or the puppy from the Cottonelle ads playing with a roll of toilet paper on the screen. The puppy was so adorable we did not mind that it was marketing. Story 44. Websites for children's brands used to include activities and games. Nintendo, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Barbie, and so on offered games, wallpapers, and coloring pages. Now they mostly exist to sell products. Even as far back as the Wii era, Nintendo removed many of their fun activities. I thought I was just getting old, but the internet now seems to be little more than social media, shopping, and Roblox. Story 45. How early are we talking? In my era, there were websites that were character shrines. For example, a full Goten shrine with a custom layout, original art, and many pages run by one girl who posted her own fan manga and timelines. This sort of thing was replaced by Tumblr blogs, and over time Tumblr restricted access to blog pages. Story 46. Not having to see cringy influencers all the time. Story 47. I will come back in an hour to see whether that picture has finished downloading. Story 48. You were lucky to have it at home. It was actually more expensive than, say, a typical cable or broadband package today. The best service you could get was Integrated Services Digital Network, which required a rental fee on top of dial-up and call charges. Getting cable was a revelation, a bit like suddenly sprouting wings and being able to fly. Story 49. The absolute dubstep banger playing while you wait for your internet to dial up. Your mother screaming at you to get off the computer because she needs to make a phone call. But you are too busy asking age, sex, location to a 54-year-old man in a chat room you have no business being in. Story 50. It was cool to be able to log into the printers at the school library and queue your paper for printing. There was usually a wait, so you had plenty of time to drive out and pick it up. At home, the phone line was tied up for at least an hour, and you had to hope no one tried to use it. Story 51. Searching for butterflies and getting a link to a page titled Butterfly Kisses that contains sexual content involving minors. This happened with my 6-year-old on the shiny new internet. Yes. Sit over your child's shoulder while they are using it. Story 52. Malicious content could hijack the browser very easily. Examples include pop-ups, windows bouncing across the screen, and other behaviors browsers would not allow today. Story 53. Routers screamed at each other. After a while, you could recognize which part of the page was being downloaded just by the sounds. Story 54. 1. Failed downloads. There was a time when web browsers could not resume a download. You might get 49 of 50 megabytes of a zip archive while trying to keep your family from answering the phone for 12 hours. When the download failed, you had to start over. 2. Early web browsers had virtually no security, and neither did Microsoft Windows. Pop-up blockers did not exist, and pop-ups were common and aggressive. They did not appear as small JavaScript overlays in the browser window today. They opened a whole new window that loaded a full page from a suspicious website. 3. Viruses, worms, and other malware were widespread. If you downloaded almost anything, it could become Trojanized. Before you knew it, you had numerous browser toolbars that hijacked your searches or sites, stole your passwords, and installed more malware. 4. Dialers. These programs used your modem to dial premium rate numbers. Story 55. All the Ate My Balls pages. Starting with Mr. T ate my balls and my favorite, Snoop Dogg ate my balls. Story 56. When the internet was new, it was easy to upset everyone online. Story 57. That awful noise your computer made when connecting to the internet. Story 58. Dial-up internet. Only one person could be online at a time, and no one could use the phone. My sons often argued about whose turn it was. Story 59. No ads anywhere. Pop-ups may indicate a virus. Many kid-friendly sites are available. Many children pretend to be adults. No subscriptions are required to access full site features. Story 60. Use Net Nanny to block inappropriate content for my teenage sons. Story 61. I remember my preteen son coming home from school and telling me about something called the World Wide Web. One of his teachers had explained it, and I could not wrap my mind around the idea that people anywhere could instantly see and talk with others. I told my son it was impossible, and I thought either his teacher was mistaken or he had misunderstood. Story 62. None of my nieces or nephews know who Jeeves is or why they should ask him. Story 63. I watched 2 people eat feces and a man break a glass in his anus. Fuck. Story 64. I ended up on the weird part of YouTube by just clicking on random suggested videos. There was no algorithm to provide a personalized feed, so you could stumble across some really strange content. Story 65. I miss many America Online features that would be handy now but have not been replicated anywhere. 1. If you had an audio file, you could type its file name into a chat preceded by an opening brace, and everyone with the same file name would hear the sound on their own computer. Some of us even had groups just for sharing those files. 2. I miss being able to log my entire email account or a thread simply by opening a log and zipping through the thread. Afterwards, I could delete the emails because I had a single file containing them all. I have wanted that for the last 20 or 30 years. I also miss logging instant messages without having to keep them in the app. Story 66. Heavy.com. Behind the music that sucks. Blister. Final Fantasy VI programs in America Online chat rooms. Winamp with Whitecap. MPEG-1 audio layer 3 downloads that took 1 hour for each minute of audio. AltaVista. Stumble Upon. GeoCities and Angelfire. Under construction graphics interchange format images. WebRings. Early online sites before they were called blogs. Multi-user dungeons. Something awful. Rotten.com, Ebaum's World, Fark, Dig, and other pre-Reddit aggregators. Finding the full text of the Anarchist's Cookbook. File transfer protocol programs. NetStorm. NetZero for free dial-up with pop-up advertisements. Netscape Navigator. Story 67. The absolute glory of having your own GeoCities page with corn tracks autoplaying in a hidden media player and flaming skull graphics interchange format images everywhere. Story 68. The blissful moments when a normal download, not from LimeWire, could resume after you disconnected because someone needed to use the phone. Story 69. Collect calls. If that is not adjacent enough, then we are going surfing on the internet. Story 70. The high-pitched shriek of your dial-up connection as it takes hours to download a single song from Napster, only for the song to be a virus that crashes the family computer. Story 71. Taking 4 hours to download an album on Kazaa. Getting kicked off the internet when someone calls the house. Story 72. The struggle of using a limited internet connection with time restrictions. Story 73. I used an internet cafe to play GTA San Andreas and to search for songs I could take home. It felt illegal because the other kids were looking at naked girls and I was a kid. Story 74. Upload the file and display a warning on the download page that it is larger than 1 megabyte. Story 75. Upload to download ratio. Z-modem file transfer protocol. Age, sex, location. Trade wars. American National Standards Institute. Story 76. Not sure if this counts as internet, but collect call from Jake's house at 6 p.m. Story 77. Press Control, Alternate, and F. Use Netscape Navigator to view the fish camera. Story 78. I would say the chat groups that had no moderation whatsoever and no purpose. They were useless because anyone could pop in and say anything. It was very hard to single someone out and have a conversation with them. The full-page images took 10 minutes to load. It felt like having the internet but not knowing what to do with it. Since Google did not exist, there was no way to search or explore like you can today. Story 79. The sound of dialing up and connecting was satisfying, and so was Napster. Story 80. The dial-up sound and waiting for days to download files. Story 81. The internet wasn't this ever-present thing woven into every part of society. It was just chat rooms, specific forums, and people hanging out in their free time. You had to go to the computer and log in, and when you were done you were actually offline and had left the internet at home. Modern life is very convenient, but I don't think humans are built to handle being always connected to everything with no real way to escape it. Story 82. I shared a personal computer pursuit password, so I could use Telenet and visit bulletin board systems all over without paying expensive long-distance charges. I was 13 in 1986 when my friend gave me access. Story 83. You would be badgered off the board for asking a question that is asked every 8 hours. Story 84. The house shared a single phone line that the internet also used. Story 85. I tried to play multi-user dungeons and similar games using Telnet before getting a real multi-user dungeon client. Story 86. I remember doing a paper on project management. We got 3 hits and 2 were for the same site. Story 87. Anonymous online chat rooms like Omegle have no verification and little moderation, and you end up flipping through a sea of sexually explicit users with the occasional normal person in the middle. Story 88. Downloading images in the joint photographic experts group format from newsgroups took about 5 minutes per image. When you opened an image, only the top 1/3 was present. The bottom 2/3 were pixelated and jumbled. Story 89-1. My parents had an ongoing battle because my father constantly tied up the phone line playing bridge online, while my mother refused to get a second phone line. 2. When I applied to graduate school, the acceptance letter arrived at my parents' address and my mother could not reach me because I was so hooked on America Online and constantly connected. She had to send me an instant message that began with the opening words of the acceptance letter. 3. Speaking of America Online, today's internet users will never know what it was like to have only a certain amount of online time included in a subscription and to be charged by the minute for overages. America Online had a free area that included members helping members. where people offered peer assistance by troubleshooting posted issues or suggesting where to find things. There was a miscellaneous message board, and as long as you related your post to America Online, you could post it. Several of us stayed in the free area for hours conversing on that board. It indirectly led to my meeting a Californian online, with whom I, a Texan, had a 2-year relationship even though I had not been online for dating. 4. The sheer absurd joy that was the alt-nose-beeping newsgroup for those of us who enjoy the game in real life. I have fond memories of my older brother in the 1970s letting me beep his nose almost endlessly, patiently sustaining the beep until his 6-year-old sister released her finger. When he was ready to stop, the signal was that beep became beer, then bear, then the word underwear. As an adult, I was delighted to find an entire gleeful group devoted to nose beeping one another across the globe. Story 90. Nintendo 8, where you can play all the old favorites for free. Story 91. Clicking a link and then doing something else for about 30 minutes while the page loads. Story 92. Prodigy draws the user interface because it is faster than downloading images. I tried explaining this to my 12-year-old once. He did not seem to understand or care how that is faster or even what exactly I was trying to describe. Story 93. Never paying for internet because there were always more 1,000-hour free discs from every company imaginable. That dial-up sound used to put me into a trance. Yahoo Games. I only learned how to play pool in real life because of that glorious place. Also, not being able to make or receive calls because someone was on the internet. Story 94. Having to log in to the internet instead of opening a web browser and immediately connecting. Story 95. Old YouTube shows such as =3 were like news programs that showed viewers the popular meme videos of the week. There were a few, but Ray William Johnson might have been the first channel I subscribed to. Story 96. I had to pay for internet access by the hour. With my first plan, I only had 5 hours of internet for the entire month. Story 97. The internet existed before the World Wide Web. Examples include Usenet, Gopher, the file transfer protocol, and bulletin board systems. Story 98. Being a cool kid with 2 landline phone numbers meant we always had internet. We had dual dial-up tones. We used LimeWire and Aries Lite. There were a lot of gore websites that were much worse than the Reddit community watch people do. Story 99. The disbelief and utter joy of seeing latency fall from a consistent 350 to 400 milliseconds down to 30 to 40 milliseconds when you upgrade a 56 kilobits per second modem to a digital subscriber line. Story 100. 2 girls, 1 cup. People may know the meme or may have even seen the video, but they will never know what it felt like to see it with the innocence we had at the time. Story 101. That could literally take hours to download an image. Story 102. Compact disc read-only memories involved installing games from them and then waiting forever to play. Story 103. I memorized phone numbers for my favorite bulletin board systems. I had half a dozen I visited regularly. I set my computer to download message boards overnight, then spent hours the next day going through them all. It was like Reddit, but not real time. I would reply, the message would be uploaded that night, and you would wait a day or two for a response. Story 104. The first thing that popped into my head was the word badger. Story 105. All the gore and shock images on the surface web weren't something you'd report to get taken down. We just kind of lived with it. Story 106. PSHH, KRR, caking, TSK, CH, ding ding ding. Story 107. Downloading individual songs instead of entire albums or an artist's discography. Story 108. Calmly waiting for a page to load for more than 15 seconds. Story 109. You used to be able to share opinions about your favorite fandom without fear of someone tracing your address, posting it online, or targeting you. You could say perfectly normal things without being accused of bigotry you did not imply. Back then, you could have reasonable conversations about fandoms without negative consequences. What are now called emojis were once called emoticons. Text-based emoticons included smiley face and crying face. Story 110. You wait forever for a picture to load. Then your mother picks up the phone and the whole thing crashes. Story 111. You wait 40 minutes for the breasts to load only to hear the garage door open. You have to close all the windows you opened, clear the history, and boot up typing tutor 7 so your mom is not suspicious. Story 112. The hamster dance was a real delight. As a child who thought the internet was only for my parents to download music from Napster, I remember realizing the internet could be playful and surprising. Story 113. You know how nowadays you wait about 15 seconds for a stream to load and then you just watch it? If you have a very slow connection, you lower the quality so it loads. In those days, videos loaded more slowly than they played, so you had to wait for them to preload or buffer before you could begin watching. Otherwise, they would reach 20 or 30 seconds and then get stuck. There were so many hilarious freeze frames. Story 114. Disconnecting someone from the internet by cutting a few inches off the end of a telephone cord, twisting the exposed wires together, and inserting it into the wall jack was an amazing discovery. My sister spent numerous hours online, and this method worked every time. Story 115. Old Godzilla was hopping around. Or the rolling on the floor laughing helicopter. Bro, check out this new video. Never gonna give you up. Story 116. Why Flash games were awesome and the peak of humanity. Oh, and quoting Est movie. Story 117. Leaving the internet on overnight to download a single MPEG audio layer 3 song. Story 118. Websites used to be personal love letters to the things you were a complete nerd about or little places to introduce yourself to the world. They looked fucking stupid and were incredibly charming. Story 119. When I bought a new movie on compact disc, the whole neighborhood was excited. Story 120. Porn involved downloading a huge number of files per picture, then batching the process of stitching those files back together overnight so you could masturbate the next night to new content. Story 121. The Wild West that was Google Video. There was so much unhinged, off-the-rails content. It was wonderful. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.